Hello again. Let's now have a look at how we can take an input from the user. We can tell the user to input something, to give me back something, and then as a result, I would get something in such a way that I could operate on the same, right? So let's take an input from the user. Now, for getting an input from the user, we need to use a built-in function, which we will just have a look at. So let's go back to the documentation. How will we go? We can go from here itself in the help. We can go to Python docs, but when we open Python docs from here, it will open up in the browser, which is on the Raspberry Pi. And because it's on the Raspberry Pi, it can take a lot of processing whenever you open a browser. Hence, if you do not want to do that on the, open a browser on the Raspberry Pi, and if you're doing it on a computer, if you've opened the screen of the Raspberry Pi on your VNC, it's okay. For now, I'm just bringing it out. I'm coming back into the Windows environment outside. And after coming here, I just need to check with the documentation. So I will go here and I will just see right there the documentation for Python. So Python docs or Python docs, and then I'll get that. So 3.6.4 documentation, the library reference, the built-in functions, and in the built-in functions, let's have a look at a function that can help us out. Let's say the function that can help us out in taking an input from the user is going to be the input itself. Okay, so let's take an input from the user and take that from the user. So I'll enter full screen. I'll see file, new file. Okay, I'm going to take an input from the user. Now, input function, input. Now, what does input function require as a parameter? Or what does this command require as a parameter? Let's have a look once again. Exit and come here. Click on input. Where is input? Click on it. Input requires an optional parameter. The parameter that is there is prompt. What is the meaning of prompt? Which means you can give a prompt, or you can ask something, or you can tell something to the user to enter. So that means I can say here, enter a number. I can tell him as a string. Now, when you tell this to him, this input function is going to execute it, right? The input function is now going to wait for the user to enter something. Now comes until the user enters something, the input function will not. Mind my words. Without the user entering something, the input function will not leave this particular execution line, which means the execution will not go forward. This input function will block the code out there. Wait for the user input. When the user inputs it, then only it will go ahead. So now when the user gives you an input, you need to store it somewhere. You need to store it in something called as a variable. So let's store it in a variable. Let's say num. And let's do the minute the user enters something, I have stored that in num. Whatever the user has entered, all I need to do is I need to print, let's say the num multiplied multiplied by, let's say 10. So if I enter 5, the answer should be ideally what? 50. The ideally should be, answer should be 50. Let's see if that is the answer. Save. Let's say, save it as input user. Cool. Now I'll run this function F5. It says enter a number. All right, I'll enter a number. Let's say 5. Ideally, answer should be 50. But what's the answer? 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5. How many times 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, it printed 5 10 times. Oh, but I thought but I thought this was a number. Let's see. Now it's not a number. Because if I will print the type of number of the number that I've got from the user, see the type, what that type of num that I've got from the user, function f5 once again. What is the number that I got from the user? Or type of num? It's a string. So that means whatever the user enters, the input function takes it as a string. So whatever the user enters, the input function takes it as a string, which is not, which then that string gets multiplied 10 times. So that means that string was 5. It got printed 10 times. Okay, so maybe you do not know this, but if there is a string, which is, let's say, hi, and if that string is multiplied 20 times, it will print hi 20 times. Okay, so that means, so basically that's the same thing which happening. When you multiply a string 10 times, it just printed it 10 times. Okay, but when I thought this was a number, no, that's not a number, this is a string. Oh, so what should I do? Which means, whatever the user imports, I need to convert it. So whatever the user imports, that means the input function is going to return to me a string. This entire input function is going to return to me a string. Now, whatever the user gives me, or whatever the user gives me, that is stored in a string when I get an import, but that I need to, before storing it in num, I need to convert that into an corresponding integer. I need to convert it into an integer because I know that 5 is going to be a number. I know that the user has to enter a number. What should I do? I will then again go back to the documentation and check if there is a built-in function which can convert a string to an integer. There is a built-in function called as int. And what does it do? It returns an integer object constructed from a number or a string of x, or it returns 0 if no arguments are given. Alright, so I need to create a number. I need to create whatever is inputted from the user. That should be converted into an integer by putting the entire operation into an int BIF, so that whatever is input from the user is converted into an integer and then stored into a number. Now if I print the type of number, and if I print the number multiplied by 10, let's see what's the answer. Enter a number 5. Type of number is class int. Answer is 50. Is that clear? So you have 5 tens are 50. So this is about an integer. It is about taking an input from the user. Alright, so you take an input from the user and then do a particular operation. Now, if you weren't, you could have done something like this for a previous file that we are already done. Let's say arithmetic operators. Instead of saying a is equal to 7 and b is equal to 3, you could have told the user to enter it. You could have said a is equal to input, enter a value for a. Okay? And because this input will take it as a string, I should convert it into an integer. Correct? And then I should have another value which says enter a value for b. Correct? Then what in integer stored in b, and then it should print a and b, and it should print a plus b, a minus b is a multiplied by b, and so on. Save, and if I run this, enter a value for a, let's say 45, and a value for b, let's say 5. Enter. Cool. So you'll have a plus b is 50, a minus b is 40, a multiplied by b is 2.5, a divided by b is 9.0, a blah blah. Yeah. So you have quite a lot of things to do when you take an input from the user. Alright. Let's get back into the mode. Okay, so this is how you take an input from the user and you will do a particular operation. So we saw that with the arithmetic operators. Clear? Alright. In the next video, we'll go on to something called as selection statements, or let's see how to make a statement or select or make a decision when we have to. Clear? Thank you.